Hello and welcome to the day one of India Global Education and Skills Summit, hosted by the Government of Telangana, Higher Education and Technical Education Department, and organized by Indie Global Media Network, engaging powerful minds and empowering transformation. And today, just to give a brief of today's opening session, we had an amazing opening session talking about the reality check of on national education policy. We had state representatives, the program chair himself, Mr. Naveen Mittal, from the state of Telangana, and we had representation policymakers from the state of Andhra Pradesh and the union from Chandigarh, from the government of Haryana, and we had school leaders from various parts of the country, following which we had technical presentation by well-known and reputed education leaders. Now we are at yet another important session, that is role and roadmap of blended learning and new age technologies. The new age technologies, blended learning has been the word, the buzzword, especially during the pandemic. We have known the power of technology, and we are glad the education fraternity has risen up to the occasion and ensured that the education continues. At the same time, there were also edutech leaders and companies who had played a very important role in providing these solutions. So, we have in the panel both from the school and also from the edutech sector. And this particular session would be focusing on syllabus, planning, teaching, skilling teachers, mental preparedness of learner and learner, upgrading infrastructure and adoption, effective learning, and AI ML, which are considered as the emerging technologies, gamification in school education. So, without a further ado, I would like to call upon our first panel speaker, who is a leader in the edutech sector. Her company and herself and her team have been ensuring that the best of technologies, cutting edge technologies, at the effective, affordable technologies are provided to the education sector. They are playing a very important role in digitizing education in India. So please join me in welcoming Mistress Kiran Dham, who is CEO and Director for Globus Infocom Limited. Thank you very much, Ms. Kiran, for joining us.
Very good evening to all of you, and thank you for having me here. It's an honor to be a part of this panel discussion. And I am the CEO at Globus Infocom Limited, which is a 20-year young organization, and we are there in the industry, coming up with meaningful, cost-effective, and user-friendly solutions for the edtech domain. We started from edtech, and still our strongest sector, apart from the three verticals which we work in, we are still there as a strong brand and the most trusted brand, I must say. And we are proud to be serving around 15,000 schools in the country, and we are there. Our presence is there in pan India, and we have served all nook and corners of the country, and our solutions are avidly used by the user, which is the motto Globus Infocom Limited is working upon, that the solutions should be used. It's not a matter of only providing the solutions, but effective implementation and usage of the solution is our strength. And we are just improvising on our strengths and coming up with new innovations day by day. Thank you so much for having me over.
Thanks for joining. And next up, I would like to call upon a young leader from the school education sector. We can say he's a futuristic educationist and has an important role to play. He's a chief executive officer of City Montessori School. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Roshan Gandhi.
Thank you
Thank you
very
very
much for having me, Sudhirji. It's a pleasure to be here today.
glad to have you. We would also be joined by yet another speaker. Before that, we would like to move on with our panel discussion. First, I would start with Mr. Gandhi. We would like to know during the pandemic, there's been emphasis on the use of technology because it was not an option, but it was a necessity back then. Now the school institution are coping up. Now there is technology is going to be there, and now there is a terminology called blended learning. How is it being taken up or integrated in your institution, and your take on that?
Well, there's a huge amount of technological progress and change happening across the education sector during this pandemic. And most teachers across the country have made incredible efforts to adapt themselves to the needs of the modern reality. And they've adopted technologies. And I think that the crucial thing here is that it's been a period of experimentation and piloting and trying things by different teachers, and different teachers have exercised their own creativity in working out which technologies are effective, working out which technologies assist them in delivering more effective online classes. It's been a real grounds up process. You know, it hasn't been effective for people like me or school leaders to dictate that, you know, we will use this technology or that technology. The most effective approach has been to allow teachers the freedom and flexibility to adopt all different technologies. And as a result, there's this massive boom in the edtech sector and in the possibilities of technology in education. In our school, of course, throughout the pandemic, we have very, very quickly adopted the use of technology for online classes. And we've tried a range of technologies. And I think what we're seeing is that now, even as we go beyond the pandemic and we start getting back into the normal situation, technology is very much here to stay. And blended learning is looking like an increasingly effective method for imparting education. It looks like the future is definitely going to be hybrid, with some elements of technology integrated education and some more traditional elements working hand in hand. And I think, in a good education, you've got, of course, there always has to be core delivery of curriculum. But apart from that, you know, India is moving slowly towards becoming a more skills-based education system. And I think now what we can really look at is that core curriculum delivery, you know, can be shifted more and more to onto technology. It can be delivered through technological platforms, through videos, through teachers teaching online. But where it's still, you know, it's always going to be very helpful to have face-to-face, in-person classes with a human connect. That is where skills are involved, because we need children to learn to be collaborative, to be team players, have good communication skills, and also to have critical thinking skills, creative skills. They need to work on a variety of projects. They need to work in groups. They need to collaborate with their peers. And you know, they also need to develop strong socio-emotional skills, which happens much more effectively when they are there in person. So I think we'll see a shift where core curriculum delivery will be delivered through technology, but then skills development will always have to be in a face-to-face environment with a strong teacher.
Absolutely right, Mr. Gandhi, that the face to face teaching is something that is always looked up to. And now we would like to come to the leader in the edutech sector, Ms. Kiran. How has been the experience of your company, and how do you look at the blended learning and the technology being adapted? And how has been the response from the institution in these times?
So yes, if I talk about response and adaptability, I would agree with Roshan, because technology was the only way to get connected with these students, and teachers doing what they're best at, teaching. And technology made it possible during pandemic times. And sitting at homes in a safe environment, technology was the one who brought education into the homes, in each home actually. And now the way forward, if we look at it, is, hybrid learning is the way forward, because I totally agree with Roshan that technology should be a part of the infrastructure of each school. The digital infrastructure of each school has to be strong. The teacher has a lot of responsibility on her shoulders now, because she has to adapt to the latest means of technology, get upskilled, being trained on, which the most of the battle is won during COVID times, because teachers adapted beautifully. They created lesson plans, they created courses, they conducted classes, they even submitted the exercises and got it back. That the most part of it has already been done. But now, with schools opening up, first and foremost, the schools are already going in for a digital transformation, which is within the classrooms. So bringing technology classrooms in the school, and then making it a mix of technology-led classroom, and which is the most important thing, the instructor-led teaching method. That has to be there. Leaving it just on the technology is not the way forward. So yes, hybrid learning is the way forward, and schools are getting prepared for it. And maybe in case things are normal also, then also hybrid learning would be a part of the curriculum. As far as the latest NEP is also concerned, so a lot of skill development exercises have to be done. A lot of experiential learning has to be brought in. The new era of learning is experiential and interactive. In our times, we have learned the rote learning method. But now, with technology coming into picture and so many options opening up due to technology, so the learning has now become experiential and interactive. And there are a number of benefits associated with this, because we have implemented a lot of language labs in most of the schools in Haryana, in Gujarat, and we have seen the impact that it is both instructor led and computer based training. So the teacher is teaching the child, and the child is learning at his or her pace also. So the content is available, the child can learn at his pace also. That freedom is given to the child now, which is very important for the development of any child. And yes, peer learning, learning within the classrooms, that is very important, because that is directly proportional to the personality development of any child. So obviously the way forward is hybrid learning, but the traditional classroom has to be blended with the technology led classrooms and the online learning tools available.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now I come to Mr. Gandhi. Uh, when we talk about the content being provided, uh, how is, and when we talk in the context of blended learning and newest technologies, how is the syllabus? If we talk about CBSE, state level, central level syllabus, or international syllabus, how is syllabus and planning and teaching happening in through the technology?
Would you clarify your question, please? It wasn't very. I can't quite understand what you're trying to ask.
Yes, what I meant to say is the syllabus. How, in this age of blended learning and the use of technology, the syllabus that is, which is the general syllabus that is there for a certain class or certain class, that is, which is the syllabus that is provided by the state, the syllabus that is provided by the central CBSE syllabus, state syllabus, how are these being included and being made part of this blended learning?
I think syllabus and blended learning need to be treated separately. The syllabus should be optimized regardless of whether it's delivered through technology or through teachers face to face. You want a good syllabus, and syllabuses need to upgrade. The exam boards need to perhaps be a little faster in updating their syllabus to become a bit more skills based. We've seen that exam boards in more developed nations tend to have syllabuses which the nature of the questions and the way that one has to go about ultimately answering exam questions is much more focused on higher order thinking, which is missing right now here. So that needs to adapt. But that's a separate question, really, from the issue of blended learning or technology, because blended learning is one method of delivery. And whatever the syllabus happens to be, one can possibly enhance the delivery by through the use of blended learning. But the syllabus needs to be looked at as a separate thing.
Okay, so how is the teaching happening now, and the in this age, how is the training of teachers towards this new age teaching is being done uh, in your school?
So that's a good question. It's very important that we need to support and train teachers. Um, I don't like to use the word training. Rather, I prefer to use the term professional development. And the reason is it's not just a question of terminology. Training implies that it's something that's being done to the teacher. There's some resource person or some expert who comes and delivers training. Whereas professional development is a more individual centric approach. It's about teachers, taking their own learning needs, professional learning needs, into their own hands. So, rather than training, it's really a process of experimentation. Now, of course, we want to provide as much support as possible, and in that sense, we provide plenty of opportunities for coaching, where more experienced teachers or experts in particular uh, areas of learning for the teacher are able to work in small groups with small numbers of teachers. There's lots of time created for teachers to learn from each other collaboratively because each teacher develops their own good practice. And it's very beneficial when teachers share that with each other through, for example, forums that we call professional learning communities, where teachers are coming together to share good practice. And then, of course, there's routinized follow up to see are the shared good practices actually being implemented in classrooms or in lesson plans, et cetera, et cetera. And of course, there's the teachers make a great effort to document their efforts, to document their learning, to document the new techniques that they're trying. There's a robust system of observation of classes, so a lot of people are going and observing classes, and the point is that it's not like an inspection, but rather it's another coaching opportunity. So someone with more experience might come and observe what's happening in class, and then provide constructive feedback to a teacher so that they can keep continuously improving themselves. So this process of continuous professional development is an effective way to help teachers learn more and empower teachers to deliver in better ways.
Yes, thanks for sharing that view. Now I come to Ms. Kiran. You as service providers and technology providers in the education sector, how is the upgradation of infrastructure happening in the institution?
Okay. The upgradation of infrastructure, yes, I would say it's very encouraging. The schools at the state government level and the government together are taking, initiatives by themselves, understanding the need, and even working on the other gadgets or infrastructure which has to be there. Like, for example, in case we have to implement a smart classroom solution in schools which are located in remote locations. We've done many projects, as you know already, that we've implemented,
Yeah.
around 7,000 schools in Haryana, which are like deep inside, which are remote locations. Now,
Yeah.
there, electricity was an issue, internet was an issue. And in spite of all that odds, I would like to compliment that the implementation of the project was within the deadline, and the government took a lot of steps to make it stabilize, whether it was the internet or and the schools also, and whether it was the power failure issues. So now they are using those solutions beautifully, and even in schools which are located in remote locations of Gujarat. So all these locations are challenging in itself, and India, with all these removing these challenges and moving a step ahead towards making India, because all this is happening. Why? Because the transformation of the country has to be as a knowledge superpower. And we are all stakeholders in this. We are all responsible towards our bit. Maybe we are contributing our bit. The schools are taking initiatives. The schools are, working on their teachers' upskilling or their professional developments. And the teachers are taking this positively. And the students are actually loving this new atmosphere of learning, and this is making a great impact. So we are all heading towards a noble cause. And all this is only because when we are together moving as a community. I can't do anything on my own unless and until I don't have support coming from the schools or initiatives coming from the government. I have these solutions available, but I should also get the opportunities. Those opportunities are coming because now the way forward is that education has to be transformed. The delivery of education has to be transformed, and we all have to be a part of this transformation.
Absolutely, absolutely right. It's all about the government and the private sector coming together,
Yes,
and this can happen only through maybe it's my view through a public-private partnership more
yes,
that
yes.
things can be taken up. Now, I would when we are talking about the students and teachers loving the adoption of this technology, Mr. Gandhi, we would like to know how is the mental preparedness of the learner and also the learner.
Learners are very adaptable. If we're talking about kids, basically, they are ready for anything. In fact, they're ahead of us in terms of mental preparedness to shift to new ways of working. A lot of them are ahead of their teachers. I think schools need to engage all their stakeholders, and actually, if anything, schools sometimes struggle with parents who are they find it harder to accept new ways of working and new ways of delivering education. And especially, I talked about a skills-based education. So sometimes when you try to shift a school's practices from more traditional methods to skills-based methods, a lot of parents sometimes don't understand. They say, well, now we're not seeing so much work going on in the copies, so there's nothing happening in school. Whereas in fact we've shifted to more dialogue happening in the classrooms, and less of writing in copies, which is better education, but the parents don't understand that. So if we need to talk about mental preparedness, perhaps schools need to engage their parents in helping them to understand the benefits of new ways of working, the introduction of technology. But kids as learners, they are prepared. They're more prepared than us. They're ahead of us, and we're catching up with them, if anything. So I think it's teachers and parents that need to work on mental preparedness.
Amazing, as you rightly mentioned. Now, Ms. Kiran, we would like to know that how is the effective learning happening? There is said to be, of course, the backside of the technology, but how is the effective learning and the outcome-based learning is happening through technology? How is your, I mean, say the companies like yours are helping in effective learning? Which are outcome based.
So effective learning, how we quantify it is that, first and foremost, the school or any education institute should be digitally strong and should have a strong platform for itself. Now, by platform, I would like to, just stressed upon is that the learning management platform. So, what we call as LMS. So, the learning management platform in COVID times also, or now post COVID also, really helps the school to generate a lot of reports. The teacher can generate assessment reports. They can come up with course creations, and the report generation, the monitoring of students progress is diligent in that, and that is what we are looking at. So quantifying the learning outcomes is one which is important for the school. For any school to be working upon the students growth, the learning outcomes have to be measured, and technology being there due to the LMS coming into the picture, it is making that possible. Even the teachers are conducting online examinations earlier. Now though it has started offline also, but earlier, maybe 3 months 4 months down the line, children were only appearing through online examinations. The results were coming, the students progress report was coming. So this is only due to technology, and the way forward is that this way of learning, with the e-content which we talk about, the e-content, which is the content for learning platform for any student. The student can access to it at any time in case he or she has to clear his or her doubts, he has that liberty to, just pen down his points and just send it to a group chat or a private chat option. So there are number of options available on online learning methods also, and working on the learning outcomes of the children through technology, and that the schools have already adopted. So that is the change we've seen in.
Great, great. Of course, there is change. Mr. Roshan, we would like to know how is your institution? I mean, say, schools are adopting to the. It involves expenses. How is it being managed? Would you like to tell us about that? And how is the response from the parents regarding this?
We will always invest in those things that will benefit the students. If the funds can be made available, then we'll make them available. We run as a non-profit, which means that whatever income comes in goes back into the school. So that way we can manage. But of course, some things perhaps parents need to put in their own things. So it really depends on the nature of the technology. Some technologies are anyway, the basic use of technology in terms of software, in terms of most LMS systems, most decent content. A lot of good stuff is out there actually for free. And more advanced systems, of course, if those are worthwhile investments, we'll make them. So we would go through a rigorous evaluation process. Normally, before adopting some major technological platform at scale, we might pilot it on a small scale. We're a large chain of schools, so we might take one of our schools, pilot it, rigorously evaluate, does it have a positive impact? If it has a real positive impact on learning outcomes, then of course it's a valuable investment, and we manage it. If it doesn't, then of course we wouldn't want to waste money on it. So it's a question of really evaluating how the children's money is to be reinvested for their benefit.
Absolutely. As you mentioned about taking up a pilot kind of project in one of your schools, in your chain of schools. So we would like to know what is the current scenario in your institution, and how do you look at things as an educationist? The role of artificial intelligence, machine learning, and VR and gamification in school education.
Well, these are becoming buzzwords, and everyone is claiming to have AI and ML in their platforms these days. So we have to be very careful about really discerning what is actual AI. And I think true AI in education is currently still limited, simply because the kind of big data that is required to drive machine learning algorithms and things is still not quite available. But yes, there is movement in that direction, which I'm optimistic about. For example, adaptive learning platforms that can really, using big data, using machine learning, understand the specific learning needs very accurately of individual children, and then either push content to them that is relevant to help them learn, or flag things to their teacher to guide the teacher to support the student better. So the power of that data can help, but it's still in a nascent phase. And so we're piloting various adaptive learning platforms. In terms of VR, the unit economics of VR currently doesn't work out, in the sense that it's a very expensive technology, and frankly, the learning outcomes have still not been evaluated enough for there to be strong evidence that it really helps in education. And in terms of gamification, gamification is a useful motive. Supposing you need to get a kid to sit on a platform, on a tech platform, and on their own, in their own time, perhaps after school, gamification can kind of give them extrinsic motivation to stay on that platform, instead of to open the learning app instead of opening the PUBG app. But frankly, it doesn't quite work like that, because they still will always prefer the PUBG app. And when you're trying to overload them with extrinsic motivation, rewards and I mean, what does gamification really look like in education? It's usually sort of in-app rewards of different kinds. Sometimes they translate into real-world rewards, but really, it's not good to give children rewards and real-world and monetary
Yeah,
rewards just for doing
yeah.
their education. That doesn't develop their intrinsic spirit of learning. In fact, it takes away from the development of their intrinsic spirit of learning. So gamification should be approached very carefully, and I don't think gamification is really the future of good quality education.
Okay, okay. Now we would like to have Your take on this, Ms. Kira?
Yeah, okay. AR, VR, machine learning, yes, it's bound to grow, you know. But yes, it's just the initial stage. In case you ask me, we are working at a ground root level, we as an organization.
Yes. Yeah.
We are working in areas where even electricity is an issue, and providing digital infrastructure there is our first motto. First, we have to provide the basics of what a technology led classroom is, and then move on to, I don't know whether I'm correct or not, these fancy terms which are there. Yes, they are the buzzwords, but this will take time in India, I should say. And plus, I feel that, we are providing the smart classroom solutions with content, or we are providing language learning apps to the students. So that is the basic where we have to start from. And yes, we together have to come up with something which beautifies or enhances the skill of a child.
Yeah.
That we have to work upon,
That
rather
is.
than giving them, fancy headsets, or a gamification app, which I feel that, the creative skills or the intuitiveness in a child, which it will only be flourished due to when he learns and experiences on his own as well, with concrete things as well,
Yeah.
you know because I have taught the Montessori way also, and I have seen children developing beautifully, whether it is their sensory motor skills, whether it is their cognitive skills. So these, the foundation years of a child, should be a mix of, giving him audio visual way of learning, which, yes, it attracts the it captures the attention of a child, obviously, and the retention is enhanced. Apart from that, just leaving him to explore things on his own. So we say that from 0 to 6 years are the most formative years of a child, where he can experience and learn by his own experiences also, apart from the teacher being there. And in higher classes, yes, as I really appreciate the current NEP, because from sixth class, you have to work on the skill development. You are preparing the child for a career ahead. At least you are instilling that in him or her, that
Yeah.
yes, this is what you are good at, and this is what you can look at it as a career or a job opportunity, or something which you can do in your life. So we are working from the right age to develop the child, to instill that thing in his mind, that yes, you're good at it, this skill you can develop, you can be a professional at it. So we are automatically working towards employment opportunities for a child from the school only.
Yeah.
So that is the way learning has to be. Yes, but I agree, AR, VR would be there, and people are working towards it. We will also work towards it, but first we'll, what is our roadmap is, currently we have to cater and provide digital infrastructure, online learning tools to every strata of the society, and then move forward towards the AR VR learning methods.
Absolutely, absolutely right. Now, before I end the session, as Mr. Kiran has touched upon National Education Policy 2020, it is considered India gets its third national education policy, maybe after close to 33 or 34 years, and it is said to be dynamic and path breaking. And but the major challenge that remains is its implementation. I would like to have a quick take from Mr. Roshan on this NEP 2020.
Yeah, I mean, the NEP 2020 is full of a wonderful vision for what education could look like. I think, where it's limited is in the guidelines for implementation, in the extent to which it's realistic for the majority of schools in India, which are, of course, either government schools or budget private schools. I think, good quality urban, higher fee schools are already doing or moving towards a lot of the things that the NEP is encouraging. regardless of whether the NEP is there, because the NEP is simply advocating what a good quality best practice in education is from which has been well established in much of the world already, and in which India is lagging behind to some extent. But for the majority of other schools, which are usually not represented in forums like these, unfortunately, um, they're at a very different starting point. A lot of them are still struggling to have teachers even turn up to school. They're struggling to produce even the most basic sort of literacy and numeracy skills that are needed. And so, the NEP should have focused more on the structural issues that are causing that, the accountability of schools and teachers, sort of real hardcore policy. So I've said in various forums that the NEP perhaps should have been called the NEV, the National Education Vision. It's a great vision for what education can and should look like, and a great aspirational thing, and it's very positive in that sense. But in terms of real hardcore policy, in terms of guidelines for implementation and assessing the ground realities and moving schools from the current point that they are at now to a point where they can achieve that vision, that is still missing. So I hope to see more policies coming out that will enable that implementation to actually happen.
Absolutely right. There comes a new terminology, national education vision. Uh, Before I wrap, Ms. Kiran, we would like to know how is your organization complementing National Education Policy 2020?
Okay. Some bit we started working already because the online learning platforms, the learning management platform, the virtual labs, what we call as language labs, also we have already with in our solution basket, and we have provided them already to the leading schools of the country. But yes, we have a lot more to do. That's why I said we are a 20-year-old young organization, because I still feel there's a lot to do, because we have to come up with our language learning apps. We have to come up with the skill development options for the schools. We have to come up with the regional content, which is the most important thing, which the policy says that up to class 5th the child has to be taught in the regional language. So there's a lot to do, and we are confident that yes, we will come up with something more strong, more meaningful, and more the strength of Globus is providing meaningful solutions and cost effective. And the most important thing is that they should be effective as far as the outcomes are concerned, whether it is training the teachers to avidly use it, whether it is seeing the learning outcomes of each student and monitoring the school's progress. So it is on a holistic way that we have to work, and we have a lot to do.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm sure the way the Globus Infocom with the able leadership is progressing would be complementing further on the regional content as well, and the latest technology. I'm sure, as Mr. Gandhi has mentioned, there is the structural challenges that needs to be addressed. If not, it will continue in reality. National education policy will be a national education vision rather, and at the same time uh, the professional development that needs to happen with the teachers that needs to be taken up, though many educational institutions are taking it up. The NEP and the future education needs the professional development within the teaching, and adoption would also be happening uh, in much faster pace given the acceptance of technology both by teaching community and the student community. With this, we would like to end this session. It's been a wonderful, insightful, and fruitful panel discussion. With this, we would like to present we a token of appreciation to our esteemed speakers. We proudly present the speaker certificate to Ms. Kiran Dham, who is CEO and Director, Globus Infocom Limited.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for this honor. Thank you.
And we would also like to present the speaker certificate as a token of appreciation, being proudly presented to Ms. Roshan Gandhi, CEO, City Montessori School.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kiran, Mr. Roshan, for joining us.
Yeah. Thank you
Thank
so
you for
much.
having me. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.